game later. Well, like, what have you been enjoying so far?
Um, on a game level, I like that all of the OCs are fun or fun ideas. Power level aside, I think all of them have a fun way to try to play around them, which is great because like it could have been like homebrew powder.
Oh yeah, yeah, definitely.
So,
The OCs are a highlight. I think the only one that is actually like not a good thing is burst, just because when you
mhm.
play into its strengths, it's worse than if you just worked around it and just used it like a normal GK2. Because
Yeah.
it doesn't do anything interesting with like breakpoints or anything or hitting your full burst, which I've seen a lot of ideas on how to fix it, and I'm not really here to do that, but I just want to say that I think 12 out of 13 hitting is pretty damn good. And I
Yeah, I
think
mean it's
we
crazy. The Turret Arc curse is finally broken. The Pharaoh's curse dispelled. Turret Arc rise up.
yeah, like
That's crazy.
I like that's whenever I say all the overclocks in this update are good, I don't always add the asterisk for burst. I just want to put that on
Mhm.
the record that when I say all of these overclocks are really good and fun and interesting, burst is in the footnotes as not really being that, which is unfortunate, but considering Ghost Ship's record with overclocks and weapon balancing, I'm good. I'm good. Leave it alone. It's
Yeah,
okay.
that's
We got like a 90 more than a 90% success rate this season. I'm good.
that's totally fair. And I would say, as much of a devil's advocate as I usually am, a contrarian about stuff, I have to say Burst is one that I wanted for years for
Yeah,
the
oh yeah, me too.
GK2. It's like the one I've asked for. I got it. I've tried so much copium about it to tell people it's gonna be okay, it's gonna be good kind of stuff. As it is right now, it's just not fun for me, and
Yeah, I just
that's the problem.
it's like anything else, and that's why I can defend pretty much everything about all the new overclocks is because regardless of how poorly the ammo economy suffers or how wonky it is or how jank
Mhm.
the like detonating cluster missiles midair, ignoring the fact that it's the most overpowered thing in the game right now. A lot of people are like, "Oh, it's just kind of janky to detonate," and I end up accidentally reloading. We can overlook all of that because like we can be like, "Oh, well, this is a fun idea." And it just needs like
Mhm.
an input change that maybe we'll get someday to be like really really good and fun. Like I don't love how CRISPR plays right now. I don't like the charging of it. Like I wish it was a lot more instant. I think that would feel
Mhm.
better. But I mean, balancing. So like I said, I can complain about that, but at the same time, like it's really fucking cool, and it can do interesting things. So I don't really care that my niche complaint isn't getting looked at. Burst is a problem in the sense that you'll aim it at a weak point and feel like you took the wrong overclock because it doesn't kill,
Yeah.
which is just a bad feeling. And you it's a better regardless of numbers. It's just a better feeling to not use it, which
Yeah.
is really really bad. Which
I'm gonna
is
sidestep it right here because I think we could, me and you, spend like 25 minutes and analyze how to fix the GK2, and I'm sure many people have spent a lot of time also suggesting that sort of stuff, but to like get onto other stuff,
yeah.
I will avoid it because there's just like I think there's a lot of paths to take, like you're saying, to tweak these things so they just feel a little bit better. But yeah, I
Yeah.
don't know. Once I get lost in it, I'm gonna be like, well, they should do this with it. This is what I want, with the GK2 and stuff.
Yeah.
But I like,
The thing
I
that
feel
lets
you on
the
it.
thing that lets me leave it alone now is that there are fun and good feeling ways to play the gun, which were not
Hmm.
really existent before season 3. So the fact that
That's
we
true.
didn't get another one doesn't bother me that much.
Yeah. Outside of the actual gameplay, what am I enjoying about the game? Going back to the question, I think the meta answer for this is it's asked and answered. It feels like we finally have a scenario where the game is delivering what the experienced player base with the game wants, which is a quality of life season and that was what we wanted, and this was a kind of a definitely hit into that zone, you know. And
Yeah.
it didn't crash before getting there, right? Because I was kind of scared, like, oh wow, this season does sound really good. And then in my mind, I'm like, I've heard a lot of people say that before, you know. And for this, it's like, oh, okay, well, this definitely hit with so many people. A lot of people are really happy with many aspects of it, you know.
Yeah,
So
and I
that's good.
mean,
That's
I
the
think
meta
that
thing for
the
me.
easy proof of that is that the game hit a new all-time player high
Hmm.
whenever it came out, which I honestly wasn't expecting. I really thought
Yeah.
there would be so many people that had, over the lifetime of the game, experienced Season 3 and Season 4 and the really draggy, sloggy content periods for the game and would just not come back, whether they be like people that have played a lot of time, like Ushanka, or
Mhm.
or new players that got fucking chain stunned by rock pox in their first has 2 mission are like, yeah, I mean, maybe this one ain't for me, boss. I'm gonna refund. Sorry, like
Yeah.
their friend that made 3 of their friends buy the game and they all just fucking shit on it and never come back. And that, so I'm so genuinely surprised and very happy that it did as well as it did. It didn't, like, double the max player count or something, but the fact that the game was so asleep for so long and managed
Yeah.
to reach a new high just by adding a what I would consider a pretty low content density update
Oh
from,
yeah.
I mean, for me personally, it's incredible. It's more than the last 3 seasons put together in value. But the point being, like, from the outset, it's one new mission, one new event, and another battle pass. That's kind of how it was marketed to people. Like, the casual players, I don't think even really register, maybe register on the overclocks, but for a lot of them, it's just, oh, look, a big drill. That's what this is about. So,
Hmm.
I mean, maybe I'm underestimating the vast majority of people, but that subset of players, the least interested subset of players, which is by, I think, a good approximation, probably the largest one, is the ones that are just barely on the fringe, keeping up with the game that never played much and don't play much. That's probably what they see this season as. So the fact that it pulled those people back too is really impressive and
Yeah, definitely.
very hopeful. Like, I
Yeah, I
mean,
don't even see that identity to it when I look at it, which it obviously is, right? The drilling deeper, it has
yeah.
this theming,
It's
and
hard for us to see it as anything
yeah,
less than all the details because they're all so impactful for what we're doing. So I mean,
right.
maybe I'm way off the fucking mark, but there's just no other way I can approach it. Like, I mean, you could lock me in a fucking room and I can name off every feature that came out in the update, the name of every
Mhm.
overclock, and basically all the things they change after only playing with them for a couple weeks. And, like, that's just not how most people engage with the game. So it's hard for me to fully fathom what that's like for them. But no, I think the game is very, very healthy for us, which is not
Mhm.
something we've ever really not seen an update focused on the health of the game for people like us. So that's pretty exciting. I mean, I think you said your piece on that already, but I don't know. It feels good, and I just wish that this wasn't the last major update we were going to get for a long time, because it very,
Sure,
very
yeah.
much feels like this is the sudden moment of clarity in your fucking grandparent with dementia right before they fucking kick it.
Well, for me, different analogy, similar
Cut that
similar
out.
vibe is no, no, no. For me, these seasonal moments where we're at right now when they launch, I feel like are very different than they are for even other creators in DRG. Because for me, the season beginning is like a wild show where all this stuff happens, but it's where the trajectory for where the game is going to be when it's dead, because I play and do so much content in the downtime when it's asleep, you know. And like when I see stuff like the corruptor, I'm like, oh my god, this is going to be rough, because for like 4 months, 8 months, I'm going to be stuck with this event in the games, and that's going to be how it feels, you know, past the honeymoon phase with the new season where people get burnt out by this thing. I'm gonna roll through playing with this for a long time, you know?
Oh yeah,
And
that's
season 5 for me is like their trajectory definitely looks the healthiest. The runway is cleared, the plane's going up, and it's like this is going to be a solid experience for this, albeit huge gap where there's nothing. It's definitely going to be, it's going in a more solid state than I've witnessed in a while, which is good for me. It's like a
yeah. I
weird
mean,
ask. Nobody
I,
else feels that way, but yeah.
I feel like the majority of the things that people are genuinely not happy with about this season, whether they be right or wrong, in my opinion or theirs, like people are complaining about 5+, people are complaining about burst
Hmm.
fire. Not to harp on that again,
Yeah.
people are complaining about like, I mean, what else? What else can you call out?
Maybe the I've seen some friction with the cave crawler enemy, or maybe the event in a little
Oh,
bit.
thank God you played into my point. So the burst fire 5+, and the cave crawler, unlike
Hmm.
the corruptor, are all
Yeah.
completely negligible to the game
Right.
experience that we've been having, or that we want to have. What, they're not taking away, they're not being reductive. I mean, maybe the core stone spawns over some sort of other event in the cave, so in a meta way you could say that yeah, it's inconveniencing you, but yeah, you can just not do it.
I
If you,
know, and honestly, like as painful as some of the experiences I'm sure I have been for it, for people and for myself, like I don't know, it's not the corruptor.
yeah,
It's not the corruptor. It's not. I don't know. It's a different kind of battle. So
it's not Prospector, it's not the
yeah, not
Corruptor, it's
Prospector.
not
Yeah.
sabotaging all your assignments. That's still an open wound, but I mean, it's, you know,
Right.
somewhat fixable for us. But yeah, I mean, that's kind of the thing. We'll get off into the weeds on 5+ in a minute, I'm sure, because I definitely
Hmm.
want to harp on that a little bit. But I mean, yeah, I can see myself not hating the game for the next 2 years in the state that it's in, which is not something I've been able to say for a long time. Like I could actually
Yeah.
see myself like drip feeding playing the game until the next season. Definitely not
Right.
heavy, definitely not as my primary game in my downtime, but I can still probably make some content and do some fun stuff with it and not
Yeah.
get completely burnt out by unfun mechanics and a community in a state where unfortunately that's something that Barrel Vision brought up, or I forget which one of them exactly, one of those two guys brought up when I was on their podcast, is the during season 4 the de facto opinion was to dislike the game, which is kind of the like that came became the default opinion in like
Hmm.
public spheres. Like it was genuine, it wasn't like in the years prior where you'd be like, hey, this minute factor of the game isn't the best it could be, and people would run to the game's defense and be like, literally die in a hole, Leaf Lover. And in season 4, it was like, hey guys, I really am not having fun, and they're like, yeah, it'd be like that. Take a break. See you in a year. Like,
Yeah.
and
That's true.
that's
There was
crazy.
a time before that where you're like, they maybe mess this up pretty bad, and they look at you and they're like, that doesn't sound like rock and stone to
Yeah, that
me.
doesn't sound like my
And you're
ghost
like,
ship,
oh.
James. Rock and Stone,
Hmm.
wholesome chungy. But no,
Yeah,
I
but
mean,
you're right. The perception definitely did wear thin at the end there
and
for
as
the group.
I mean, as much as I've been the certified #1 Ghost Ship James hater since day one for every little
Mm-hmm.
thing that they've done, I wasn't happy to see the game be hated by default. Like, or I mean, hate's a strong word for the majority of people. I don't want to put that in their mouth, but the public perception of the game being bad for the overwhelming majority of people, or at least the majority of people, was not something that made me happy as much as people would like to believe. Because,
Yeah, it's
that's.
this is making me think about a small tangent, but I want to get into it since
Oh,
we're
yeah, go ahead.
next to it right now with DRG, and it's the one thing I've noticed, which is more time that's passed, more people are just not willing to do industrial sabotage. And it's not just a small group that I find myself a part of that has always been that way, pushing against it. I mean, like generally, when I see a, other players, people I don't even know, recording the game, there is a uniform opinion that they don't want to do it. And that's sort of surprising to me because nothing's changing about it. And I want to know, I mean, we're all hyped on season 5 and that's the point of this, but there's still a small elephant in the room, which is, guys, people just straight up don't like a part of your game, and more people don't like it every day, and there's nothing changing about it. Industrial sabotage is getting worse for the general player base, and it's still gonna live for the next year, you know? So I don't know. I'm just kind of curious about that. It seems like that didn't shift at all.
I think it's too. I mean, one thing to say is like, well, it's not shifting anymore as you're seeing this change. So I'm not disagreeing with you, but I guess what I want to say is it has gotten a lot better since it was added, and it's
Yeah.
interesting that people are just now kind of catching up with the idea that it's still not very good. And I think
Yeah.
that's kind of two, like, there's two roads that are leading to that, which is one, the more, I guess, generous one that doesn't lend me as having a correct opinion, which is that people are just playing it more than they ever used to. Like, even the certified robot defenders back in the day probably didn't play it that much.
Hmm.
And that's fine. Like, it's okay to view sabotage as, like, a different thing and only play it when you really want to throw down and play driller and feel really Billy Badass and blow up turrets with flamethrower. But I feel like even back in those days, people weren't playing it to the level of like needing of like the inverse exposure therapy basically. And now gradually over time, as it's been forced into assignments, and console players and people who play on lower hazards don't have an option to get away from it through modding or dropping the difficulty so low that it's trivial. So like for us, you know, we see a Sabo that we don't want to deal with, we drop to Has 1 and just blast it, and it's over. And it sucks, but we get through it in like 10 minutes, and it's no big deal. It's even good for XP. But for people who are stuck in Has 2 or 3, dropping it to 2 or 1 doesn't really alleviate the enemy problem. So like people that don't have overclocks for that are good. Like I think industrial sabotage is probably the most overclock dependent mission in the game, and I don't want to dwell too much on that. But there isn't really
That's probably
any
fair, yeah.
crazy single target that isn't very ammo hungry without an overclock. Like if
Well,
you
I
look,
guess let me try to tackle the hazard option thing from another angle of it too, to sort of hit it from both sides. I will not pick it with other people who I'm playing with, and I want to be fair about mission rotation or play other people's stuff or do that kind of thing. That's a part of the game sort of spirit, right? Is the
yeah,
camaraderie. As much as it sort of pains me to talk about it in that way because I'm very granular about DRG and I don't live in the spirit of DRG rock and stone kind of
yeah. But I
thing.
mean,
I
just
mean,
on
it is that, and you want to you don't want to exclude somebody who's got a mission you don't want to play,
yeah,
and
no, and
that's already a line. But the worst part is they don't want to even do it. They don't even care that you're not progressing their promotion on industrial sabotage because they don't want to play it as much as you don't want to play it, and that's a failure.
yeah.
That's a failure in design that people are wanting to turn the game off. And I guess why I'm pushing hard on this is, and I don't expect anything in turn, but what I'm trying to tell people who play the game is season 5 is here. That's 4 previous season of sabotage. I think it's okay to retire the idea of sabotage being tedious. Like 2 hacks, long boss fight. This is what it is. It's always this way. It's a big thing. It's a hurdle. You can trivialize it in different approaches. You could skip it with mods. You can do all sorts of stuff, whatever. I think enough real human time has passed where we can say, okay, guys, we played that mission. Let's just go ahead and cut out some of the fluff because the other side is we just straight up don't want to do it anymore, and it's getting bad. Like it's
Yeah,
time to trim the fat. We respected the fat on it for a long time,
and
but
I think we tried, like, we really, like, I know you in particular, I watched the stream, but you really got granular with Caretaker and really
yeah,
tried to, like, figure something out with it. like some interesting way to attack it, but it really always just came down to you can cryo the vents and then you just beat on it.
Mm.
Like there's really nothing like I think the dreads alone, like you can do a lot of cool stuff with each one. Just taking OG for example, because it's probably the least interesting. You can hit it with supply pods. That goes for all the dreads. You can phase
Mm.
skip if you get the lineups and the chunking and the theoreticals right. You can kill all the dreads with a bulk detonator. You can lure them around the map by abusing the way that they dig. So you can basically be invincible to the dread. You can just step through a doorway where it has a way to path around to you, and you can just
Yeah.
wait it out. Like, you can abuse them through game knowledge. And the best you can do with the caretaker is do damage to it when it lets you and not die. And I think
Yeah, I mean,
that makes it a bad boss.
that's part of the problem. The best you can do, and maybe you can make an argument for this being like a hyper way to look at DRG, but the best thing you can do for Caretaker is just repeat the steps that worked the best for you this far,
Hmm.
and do it again. And I mean, Dreads have some variants and there's some fun to try new ways, but like for Caretaker and for Industrial Sabotage, it feels really like, what's the best way I can get this over with so I can move on?
And
And
I
I
think
don't
it's
know,
it's
they're,
also the
yeah.
combination of the defense objectives that drag and
Hmm.
the boss fight that invalidates builds and robots invalidating builds. So in that way, I think it has a lot of problems with build diversity, which have gotten better, admittedly. Like now, Ice Storm can kill a robot, like big whoop. But
Yeah.
at the same time, you don't want to be running anything other than Ice Spear on Cryo Cannon when it comes down to Caretaker, because how the hell are you going to kill the eyes without using 15 impact axes? So it's like, I don't know. It has a lot of problems that can't be solved by reducing the caretaker's health by 10% or adding a new attack. The best thing you could do in that way is remove one of the power stations. Just straight up.
Hmm.
Don't have a long and short, don't have one or two, one power station. That's it.
Hmm.
Cut half of the cave out and that would make it fast and I still wouldn't say fun, but it would make it for us it would feel great because it
Yeah.
literally halves more or less halves the mission time because of all the traversing the tunnels you have to do.
There's there's definitely some friction with playing a harder difficulty and trying to play quickly and not trying to do like optimal, just speed playing or attempting to get through the mission quickly with a random assortment of people, not worried about builds. You're just playing, right? Trying to get through it quickly, and then you're trying to multitask the hacks. It can be fun, but it also adds this obstacle of like, if it goes wrong for a group, you have to kind of reset the whole situation. You got to go res some people, and you have to divide the labor, and like, that's okay. It's a part of the challenge of trying to do two hacks at once or just going quickly, and like that's a cool dynamic. But also at the same time, it is a huge factor of like people are just trying to get out of this experience as fast as
Yeah,
possible. That's
and
why they're doing this way.
it also doesn't feel like that's a good like it's not a creative choice. It's just
Mm.
the only choice you can make. Is it
Yeah.
do we do it one at a time or do we do both? And what you kind of said is people want to play faster and mob and pubs now. That's what the other road I was talking about of why people are starting to resent sabotage is because people are starting to play the game better and faster. And I've seen the
Mm.
change in the win. And I've seen people talk more like directly about like why are you doing this way, like people have started to grow resentful towards the fucking gold pinging shit too. Like I've seen a
Mm.
lot more dissenting opinions towards that than ever. And over the years it was like first year like 1.0 you could not say anything in edgewise about the one time you got friendly fired because you deposited it without pinging it. You'd get fucking 100 down votes, fucking reported. Jacob would leak your IP and pin it on the subreddit. Year two, it was like, yeah, I ping it for a couple minutes and then I'll put it in. And then the next year it was, yeah, I'll give it a couple and go about my business. Now it's like, bro, you can have your fun. I got things I wanna break rocks and shoot shit. Like it's genuinely like a change in the wind, and these people are not getting like doxxed Not getting their mothers aren't getting phone calls anymore asking for their address.
I gotta get Jacob to unpin my IP.
Yeah, no, you're done for, bozo. Fucking stink dungeon 192.168.0.0.1.
I guess this is kind of a rough way to talk about season 5 is to put industrial sabotage under the microscope out of nowhere, and
blast.
I'm gonna let it go. But it's
Yeah,
just,
me too.
I think it does relate to what you're saying though, that the player base is shifting a little bit, and also something happens to the game when the expectation of what's going to happen in the mission has a floor, and then something goes wrong and it slows people down or it causes an obstacle, and then it's not as fun. And unfortunately for Sabo, the expectation is for many people playing it is just for it to be over and to play a different one.
And
And I
anything
think
that isn't it being over is a problem.
I know, and that's the problem. So when you go into the missions and it slows down, everybody's immediately taking a hit, for their resolve to keep doing it. So that's, I don't know. Anyways, I'll let it go. Industrial sabotage on blast. Back to season 1. Hell yeah. All right, season 5 stuff.
So what else you got? I'm still dancing around House 5 because I feel like
Yeah,
that's
well,
gonna be a full
we can
hour
kick
on
the
its own.
Has 5 thing down. I guess.
What do you think about new enemies?
Oh,
Barrage, Vartok, Crawler, Stalker.
I like the Vartok. Vartok at the top of all the new stuff. That's the one that's on the ceiling that's
Yeah.
a suggestive shape.
Scampling Brampeloid.
Yeah, with the little nodules that are all over the place you shoot. Yeah, I'm down with that one. That one's sick.
I haven't encountered one of those yet that was really scummy. And
Yeah, I
maybe
was wondering about that too.
maybe my opinion will shift once it does, but like I've always had something to crush the bulbs with, like heavy hitter EPC, just literally playing scout, gunner can, any weapon, even autocannon can do enough because they're weak enough. Like, I mean, maybe magic bullets, mortar rounds would suck, but that's your own fault if you're taking that. I just
This is the
haven't
one
had
on
a
the
bad.
ceiling, right?
Yeah, yeah. I just haven't
Okay,
had a
okay.
bad encounter with trying to get LOS on any of the bumps to kill it.
Yeah, my only thing on it is I worry that, like, what if we get a scenario where one of the nodes spawns in a nearby tunnel that's completely LOS, like you said.
Yeah.
That could be annoying. But I haven't had that happen, and that's probably, like, the only scenario where I don't think it's cool.
It's
Otherwise, great addition.
yeah, and even in that situation though, it is fully dodgeable. Is
Mm.
what also saves it. So even when I have one of those situations, I don't think it's gonna ruin it like forever. I definitely will
Mm.
take note. But like it's not a sniper turret. It doesn't just randomly hit scan you whenever it wants to instead of following half a second behind you. It does actually like respect the way that projectiles play in the game is that if you are 100% sure where it's coming from and when it's coming from, you should be able to dodge it with if you're good enough. And it follows that logic basically. Because the only way to dodge snipers, God forbid we go back to sabotage, but the only way to dodge snipers is to break line of sight if it's doing the insta track on you versus trailing behind you. Still don't understand why that is, but snipers are like the one exception, other than some of the other robots. But that's beside the point.
So on the next one, we have crawlers. We got the big spitballer,
Yeah, the goop gobbler,
the goop gobbler, the crawler, and what else?
stalker.
Oh, the stalker, of course, the stalker.
You
Well,
forgot
let me
him
talk
because
about the
he was
goop gobbler.
invisible.
Oh wait. Oh, the invisibility. I couldn't see him in my brain. The goop gobbler. I like the goop gobbler next. Every time I see one, I think of this lizard. The lizard. Every time I see one in the cave.
That's pretty good. That's
But
a good
I
lizard.
like them. It's like there's not to get specific about it because these numbers and stuff can change, and I also don't know what I'm talking about. But they have like a different stat sheet than spitballers. They're like resistant to fire, so that kind of approach you can have with spitballers, where you ignite them and then like snipe them out with VB or something like that, is less effective, which is cool. And they are like super affected by like cooling is very good, like freezing them because they
Yeah.
just have a big health pool, and freezing them invalidates all they're doing. So
Yeah,
I
that's
mean,
been most of my. I haven't really had like a punishing encounter with one yet, so
mhm.
I don't have much to say. I usually just end up freezing them and just shooting them in the back of the head because they're kind of like. I will say that if I was actually playing like by the weak point, I think they would be significantly more challenging because they don't really twist around for you like a spitballer and just show you their
Yeah,
weak point while they're shooting you. So it's definitely a more interesting enemy than a spitballer. It's just I don't know. I don't think they're like super threatening, and I don't think they need to be. They're denying area versus
yeah,
denying line of sight, which is not really something another stationary does. I mean, I guess a spitballer kind of denies area, but it's like on a
yeah,
metronome rather
yeah.
than
It's like making you move.
yeah, rather than as soon as it attacks now for the next like 4 seconds, this whole area is not where you want to be. Versus
Yeah,
spitballer, you look at it, you see who it's aiming at, and as long as they're not trash or on ping, then they are invincible as long as they're paying attention. So it's
yeah.
interesting.
I definitely think it works for what you're saying. I would say like evaluating the obstacle it creates. I think dying to it is pretty comical. I think that like, oh, I overextended and I got way too ego in that moment, and now I'm sitting in a field of bombs like a dummy, you know. And resetting that situation, it like is funny because somebody else to get you out of it, they're gonna have to run in and shield and do the same risk that you just did, or take the encounter and be like, all you had to do was do this. It's dead now. I'm gonna get you, which I think is like pretty satisfying to watch that happen to somebody or be the person, which is fun.
Yeah, it's a quick death trap. It's
Yeah,
not like dying under a core lock or
that's true.
anywhere
Yeah,
near a corruptor or a prospector or getting insta killed by a nem. I mean, not
yeah.
that it's really on the same tier as those by any means, but it doesn't feel
No,
nearly
but
as
that's like
punishing to lay at the feet of this beast.
right. Yeah, 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 definitely.
So I mean, I guess if we're going to talk about crawlers, we have to talk about the core stone in its entirety because they kind of go hand in hand.
Well, I guess
I,
we should do stalkers first, and
okay.
then crawlers then.
Okay, he's got so much to say about crawlers.
But if we're
Stalkers,
gonna do the event and everything, may as well group it.
yeah, stalkers are kind of crazy. Like I
Yeah.
haven't figured out a great way to play against them yet, but there have been a couple times where with fast or with aggressive, I feel like they've closed in on me before I could stop them.
Oh
And
yeah,
I don't
definitely.
know if that's a build issue
Oh, dude, I think
or
that's a
I should be
universal
ping.
thing.
Well, what if pinging them is the way to go? What if you should be pinging them instead of shooting them to
Well,
stop them because they freak out, right?
yeah, then they okay, well, first of all, if they're in the attack, they've decided and you go to ping them, it doesn't work like a stun. I've pinged
Mm.
them defensively to be like, I would rather not get hit than hit this guy. I'm gonna ping him and hope that it makes him scared, and they just commit. And so I can tell you, as far as like that late
Mm.
defensively, you aren't getting out of the scenario. Maybe you dodge it, but it
I
doesn't
mean,
stop that.
I
But
don't
yeah,
think
no, I
even
mean like when you're getting stalked, you could ping it to divert it for sure. That would work.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I think as soon as you're in the attack, the only way to like step it like that is to dash or grapple,
Mhm.
because those things even without aggressive, they close that distance pretty quickly. I
Mhm.
mean, time will tell to see like as many more people and I play more builds against them and figure out what that like meaningful hit needs to be on them. But like minigun, hurricane without clusters if you're lucky. I mean, a lot of guns just don't have the stopping power
Mhm.
to actually stop it when it's bearing down on you. I mean, minigun's probably the easy one to pick on because of the theoretical not being spun up. But
Yeah, it's pretty early. I definitely don't know all the different counterplay. I did try to. I've been as far as it's successfully hitting people trying to dodge it. There have been some scenarios where it's like, wow, this is borderline. This thing hit me mid dash. I was way far away.
mm,
But yeah, I think for me, it's actually, I think. where I don't, if there's some part of it I don't like, it's the amount of time I can't deal with it. Where if there's a lot of other stuff going on and I'm trying to respect the stalker so I could ping it or fire on it or whatever have you, I'm just giving up so much time not interacting with other stuff, you know? And that's really tough because if I'm trying to move around and reposition and find it and do this stuff, it's taking a bunch of time where I'm not killing other threats as well. And it's just wasting that time where I could be fighting. And if I instead do the fighting and just say, I'm not going to worry about it, well, I'm going to get hit by the stalker. And it's a huge, huge punish to have been hit by one, you know?
Yeah, even on plussed up difficulty, getting hit by one of those is very, very crushing to like kiting and taking chip, because now you are actually taking the chip rather than shielding it off. Yeah, no, I think they're interesting, and time will tell. I think there's definitely some BS hits that could be addressed with like the client experience, like maybe play in the favor of the clients who dash away a little bit more generously. I don't know how that would work code-wise, but I don't know. Definitely, that's the only thing I think is when you dodge it, when you feel like you dodge it, you should be able to dodge it and not get like a fucking extender hitbox to hit you.
Yeah. I guess my weird ask other people might raise an eyebrow at is I actually want them to be way more aggressive. I want them to be suicidal because I want to be able to move on from them terrorizing me. It would be better for me to have that.
I think that, I don't know, I think that as much as like I think that is the challenge of them, even if it's not necessarily super fun, is that now you do have to keep a bullet or 5 left anytime you're fighting anything until this thing is confirmed dead, because if you get caught on the start of a reload when it materializes in a tight space behind you, you are just going to take the hit. And I mean, as we get better, it'll tell on whether or not it is actually just like unfair, the distance that they attack you from and the distance that their shimmer is visible from with most of the weapons in the game, or if it is just a krill issue right now.
Well, now I understand GSG's 4-year vision for why they made power attack only a 50% chance to stun. It only took them this long for it to really pay off.
So you could coin flip and then get circumcised by a slasher or a stalker.
Yeah, pretty much.
Ding! I lose again. All right, core stone crawlies.
Yeah, as I've come to call them, the men.
Man.
Yeah, man in the caves.
I mean, just shoot a zipline, I guess. I don't know.
I know, it's that's wow, you know, really something.
That immediately, like the second or third time I encountered one of those with some plus up modifiers, I was just like, oh, I'm going up. See you later.
Yeah. Finally, I can ping for the gunner. The tables have turned.
I don't know. I think the core stone's very fun. It's just really hard to get a handle on the crawlers.
Yeah.
I haven't paid close enough attention or fought it on a low enough difficulty to be able to, but I don't know like what the interval for them spawning is. Like I think it's just a constant flow. Pretty sure.
I haven't played in a scenario where I've been by myself doing the core stone, so I haven't been able to look at like that flow at all. I've been multiplayer, and in multiplayer everybody's cycling as fast as it can, so it just feels like constant pressure, you know?
Yeah, and that may be the right answer if it is constant pressure, but it could very well be a egg situation. Or
well, I don't know. I'm sure that people know right away if I say this, and people are like, that's not how this works at all. Just alleging. When I first fought it, like in the first or second try, I was like, if this disable wave or disable pressure, you know, you could get it to an interval where you're fighting this thing, and then if it slows down enough, you can essentially turn off the waves if it were to do that, you know? I don't know how it affects the game flow or anything like that, but I've been thinking about the same stuff as you with
spawn table of the missions.
Yeah, that kind of stuff, yeah.
Oh, yeah, I mean, the machine events and point extraction proves that interaction has existed in the past, so It's very
Right.
possible. It'd be good to test. Because, I mean, if you
Yeah.
can do it, if you can have a situation where you go through the dirt and either don't dig it wide enough or fill it up with plats, you might be able to have a fucking creative mode mining mission.
Yeah.
It'll be
So
interesting to
something
see.
interesting to see. I don't know. It's just something that came to my mind for it. I guess I will say my piece quickly. My anti-roguelike propaganda, okay? I don't want to be demonized for this. I guess the design stuff worries me about Rogue Core because if this is the enemy we're going to get in Rogue Core and the way they do damage and stuff, to me it feels so very typical of a roguelike enemy where you feel like this thing is easy to recognize what it is, see what its moveset is, fight it and everything else, but you're going to get chipped. You're going to get hurt. It doesn't feel like, I mean, you can slow them and group them and do AoE, and there are counterplays to it. But as far as their raw attack and how you encounter them and strafe them and deal with everything else in the game, they're definitely an enemy that says, I'm going to track you, I'm going to follow you, and I'm going to hit you with this melee slam, and it's going to connect 90% of the time, If I'm just not CC'd, I'm going to hit you with this. You're not going to dodge it because I'm tracking you, and it's just a part of my kit. And that really worries me for Rogue Core because I feel like that's going to be the whole design premise to a bunch of the enemies is we're going to chip you out for damage, so you better have a good build. You're not going to skill this if you didn't take health. You're just going to get hurt.
Yeah. And I don't know. A lot of rogue core on a fundamental level worries me. I also said a lot of this on the Barrel Vision thing. Is it's not. I mean, does it? Is it supposed to be the same as Deep Rock? Is it supposed to appeal to all the same isms that we have with Deep Rock? I mean, first from a game design point of view, I'd say that's probably not a good idea to make the same game twice and
Mm.
not commit to it being the new one. But at the same time, I don't know how much overlap there is between a game where you fine tune a build and then use it to play 100 different missions that are all very random, and a game where you have basically no say in your build beyond the three options that you're given every time you collect enough gem XP and level up, or shoot enough monsters, or get to the end of a cave and go in an elevator. I don't know how much overlap there is between that and the Deep Rock that we're playing right now, because if, like, didn't they not say Rogue Core is going to be classless and all the movement and all the stuff is going to come from what you equip as you run?
Yeah, no, I think you nailed it. Yeah.
I mean, how do you make a meaningful co-op interplay, like a co-op system interplay, whenever everything is up to chance and you
Hmm.
might not be able to choose what you want to choose? And maybe there will be some like workarounds to this where at level 5 everyone will get to vote on which movement tool they want, and there'll be no dupes and things like that. But at that point, like, I mean, then that's almost the same thing. So it's weird to me that, like, it's a new game just to give the guy with the grappling hook a minigun and +5 -5 upgrades
Yeah.
mid mission. I don't know. I mean, it'll surely be better than that when it manifests itself. But my concern is that it's just losing all of the things that make running through randomly generated caves good and fun to
Hmm.
obtain something that the people that enjoy the game that we have right now aren't necessarily going to latch onto or be interested in. So
Yeah.
I'd like to be proven wrong, but that's just kind of that's how my worry shapes right now.
I guess I say it because like I have a lot of pushback against roguelikes in general, and I am just worried about the me enjoying the future product because of that, which is a very personal thing, putting it out in the open. It's just, I guess, there is a lot of room for me to improve all the time. When I play the game, I think about many things I can do. I could focus a lot better and have better games now when I play DRG. But I've done a lot of trials. I've done a lot of hard things, and I feel like I have a general high level of preparedness for enemies when they add new content. This is the first time they've ever added an enemy where I'm just like, wow, yeah, I'm just definitely gonna get hit by that. That thing is definitely just gonna deal damage to me for sure. You know, class regardless, situation regardless, build. There's just gonna be these guys that are gonna chip me in this scenario, and I really hope that. I don't know. It just makes me afraid. I don't have a problem with it in DRG. Sure, you know, it's gonna chip me down. That's the event. Looking at it through the lens for DRG alone, fine, whatever. You know, sit on the zip line, do these other things, bring builds for it. It feels like an enemy that's like, this enemy is just gonna make my runs end in Rogue Core. So,
Yeah,
anyways,
I mean, yeah, I mean that kind of the pessimist in me says, well, that shows you for not getting lucky enough to get the 10% move speed epic dwarf
yeah,
upgrade before you encountered the stage 3 set piece where a door opens and a
totally.
bunch of crawlers come spilling out. Like, is that gonna be the flow of it? Like,
I was a fool for not taking the breach cutter with the 300% damage upgrade that would just one shot these enemies before I even looked at them. That was my mistake. I'll just play better next time. That's sort of
yeah.
the feeling I get, which is I shouldn't put a game that doesn't exist on trial because of a totally random element I'm pulling from another one. That is messed up, but that's just what the enemy makes me think when I fight it. So that's where I'm at with the crawler. Pretty rough on the crawler, but yeah, that's where I'm at.
Yeah, I don't know. I have cautious optimism for Rogue Core, but it does weigh on me the fact that if it isn't everything that, personal opinion, I want it to be, I have lost 2 years of Deep Rock development to get
Yeah,
that. Like I'm sure it's gonna be some people's favorite game ever. I'm sure there's gonna be
yeah.
some Binding of Isaac players who really liked Ultra Kill. They're gonna fucking latch on and fucking really, really, really enjoy it, and I don't want to take that away from those people. I'm not saying Rogue Core shouldn't exist or anything, but just the amount of ways that the development of Rogue Core, just the amount of ways that Rogue Core develops that
Mhm.
is really unfun and doesn't have more than a few hundred hours of playtime for even the most dedicated DRG players is very scary.
Mhm.
So that's my thoughts. I mean, I don't really infer much about Rogue Core from the crawlers. I probably should. I think you're probably more right than
Yeah, I'm
I
sorry.
am
I'm
to
projecting
do that.
my
I mean
insane
that
thoughts on that.
I mean that's literally what it's supposed to be though. So,
Yeah.
I mean maybe
That feeling when all the people who carry me in Deep Rock every day are playing Rogue Core and they see that I can't even get past Journeyman difficulty on my own feels bad, man. That's it. That's what it is. Watching
I
me
guess
struggle on newbie rookie mode.
yeah,
Um,
fucking on fresh reclaimer mode.
let
So
me
so I
see.
before we get too off into the angry zone, at least the angry zone I know I'm treading towards. What else would you want to see added to DRG? Obviously, we're out of time to get more things into DRG before Rogue Core, and worst case scenario, maybe they never even come back to DRG. I know that's not anything close to what they've said, but we're kind of at a point where what else would you think is missing from the game right now? Like, I've said 100 times, like I'd like to see more simple, enjoyable mission types that explore one idea, or more subsystems, or like a fleshed out, perk rework is one way to put it. But I'd like to see the like armor rig and perk systems go together and have like some not necessarily power creep, but just repackaging there, and like a lot of like other subsystems I'd like to see put into the game. But what do you feel like is missing? Like is actually sorely something the game could use?
I guess there's like two ways to branch off in that, which is like the one thing DRG is missing, or the like one thing to close the book on. If I had to ask for one thing to be added,
Yeah, I mean, I think it can be a lot of smaller things as well, and I think that are more actionable might be better. But I put it as like one wish. If I could ask for one more big thing, like the monkey's paw's got one finger left for us, and like that's kind of like a big thing you're talking about, and then I have a whole list of smaller things that wouldn't be
Yeah,
as
if I
valuable.
could, if I was gonna pull one out of nowhere on the spot, because I've not thought about this at all, and I
Potions.
have to think of this really hard answer. I guess my genie wish would be the romantic idea in my head is this, which is if GSG just gave us a reason to want to do it all over again. That would be my parting wish to have put in the game, because like I think it's in a really good spot to send the ship off or whatever, and they've added a lot of stuff, and they could add more to it. They add systems and all that stuff, like you said. But I guess if they were gonna leave it today, and I could ask them to do one big thing, I would want them to have a reason to start over. Because right now, I think that's missing from DRG. That's in a lot of other games, where you could be a veteran player with thousands of hours, but there's no real reason to start over DRG, and I've tried, and a lot of people have tried, but it just doesn't have that. And I know that's a massive ask, because so many things about DRG are based around this progression grind that exists, right? But if they could find the secret ingredient for me to say, I'm starting over, boys, we're going, back to zero, I think that does something for me. Because right now, everything that's there is good. Obviously, I love the game. One of my most played games of all time, if not the top. So to really solidify that forever, if they just had a way that made me want to start the journey over again, I'd be trapped. So that's what comes to mind.
So like a new game plus, or like I
Yeah.
mean, would it be a second save or would it be like overwrite?
I don't know. I guess that's really what's so hard about it, is I don't even have a direction to point them in the desert of this idea. But I think if there's a baby step forward, I think of I mean, DRG already has like a prestige like Call of Duty back in the day, right? That's a lot of what DRG does. But sort of that idea again, maybe on a grand scale or something. I don't know. It's not constructed at all, but yeah, I don't know.
So
Just a reason to want to go back and experience the grind.
so my thought for that would be sort of like kind of like a second save, but not something you could go back and forth between, but
Mm-hmm.
something you go into with a stipulation. So something that says you need to beat this many Hazard 5 missions while only having completed this many missions on your save,
Mm-hmm.
or only doing this, or without having beer buffs, or without a secondary weapon or something. You need
Oh,
to
okay.
complete 30 missions, and then that would feed something back to your main file. Like
Mm-hmm.
that's a good place for the title system, I guess, is like engineer primary mastery, or engineer primary like war chief. Basically,
Yeah.
you got engineer to 25 on only hazard 3 or above missions without failing, without a secondary weapon, and
Yeah, I
you
guess
could
that's a good way to do it.
and
You
you
view it through
like
the lens of your main account, yeah.
yeah, so like I mean I think I say that because I'm way too attached to my main account to ever be away from that. So I would want something that doesn't require me to full reset, or at least something that would account for how far over max ruby I've gone. Because if I was gonna reset Scout to Bronze 1, and I was only gonna get one Ruby 3 Prestige border, I don't think I'd do that. Because having Ruby 3 Prestiged and then 80 times over, if I would get 4 frames because I'm 4 times over, then okay, maybe I can chill with that. But it's like just losing stuff like that. I think would be very countercourse to DRG, and a lot of people wouldn't
Mhm.
like it. But I really like the idea of putting all the skill and knowledge into the early game, the unequipped, no money, no bitches, like no perk points, no balls, like mode of play, that's actually really difficult. Like, it's really fucking difficult to take on like Has 4s and 5s with only first tier upgrades on all your weapons, and being able to capture that and like lock that into a certain class and a certain experience over a few like a dozens of hours of play would be really valuable. Like what you did with hardcore, I didn't want to throw
Yeah.
that out right away because that's a little extreme, but actually like locking your difficulty, like starting a challenge save and only being able to play NG and only being able to play Has 4, and your goal is to promote 3 times, and if you lose a mission it wipes your save. Like that's not a good thing for like new players. Like if
No.
someone
Yeah.
like clicked over to that and was like, "Oh, this game's so fun." They're like, "Oh, where'd my stuff go?" But for people like us, like maybe that one, maybe you could unlock these challenges as you promote. So when you get bronze 3, then it's the play 10 hazard 3s from a fresh engineer save file with only your primary. And that's what you
Mhm.
unlock for getting bronze 3 is the ability to go hop over to a new save and then pull something back. And then when you get silver 3 on NG, it's like, I don't know, not to harp on that same idea, but 10 hazard 4s with just your secondary, like things like that. And obviously not make that like the hardcore thing, because that would be really punishing, I think. But
Mhm.
and then maybe that then Ruby 3 or Legendary 3, that's when you get promote without losing. You can only play Has 4 for your first 20 levels. Once you're level 20, you're stuck on Has 5, and you have to get to level 25. And I'm sure that would come with some very cheesy strategies, of course, but I mean, it's something, you know?
Yeah, I think that something to make you go back, whether it's like that, these like milestone groups of things makes you go back to do it is fun because it puts you in a weird scenario where you don't have all the tools, and in like a co-op setting you can even ask people for help. Like if you don't want to like do the thing straight up, the maybe the challenge isn't something you want to do, you can ask people to help you do the challenge, which is always like the actual power scaling is gone so fast for veterans because they unlock everything. And the other thing that's gone really fast is these quirky one-off things you do once. Now, I don't know that everybody wants to do the pipe riding like 10 or 20 times, that achievement, you know,
Mm-hmm.
or stand on the crawler or whatever. But like having the reason to ask other people to do it with you is a fun thing. And once you've done it, you don't really need to do it again except to help somebody else. So having those little one-off things that make you go back and repeat elements of the early game, whether it's like your power scaling or side objectives that are just a one-time thing, I think that could be fun. That's I guess I want a reason to do it, play it from the beginning again.
Yeah, and I mean, you've made your own reasons, and I think you've proven that there is
Yeah,
some
I
fun to
definitely
have there.
I've definitely done it like a few times as well, and I know that it's fun. I will say from my experience, I got about two-thirds of the way done with the overclock grind a second time, and then it fizzled out. I stopped doing it. So that's about where I got on as far as I got a second time all the way through the game, and I was like, yeah, I'm just not going to grind the rest of these OCs anymore. This is pointless.
But I mean,
So.
and pretty much any tangible goal other than that, though, you had already passed. So
Right,
having
yeah, oh yeah,
those
way
like
past it.
having that save file stop point would be an interesting idea, I think.
Oh, and it was really fun long before that. You know, like the first 10 hours or 15 hours of that save were incredibly fun.
Yeah,
So,
and
yeah.
maybe, and if that's all it was for the lower tier, the lower promotion tier challenge files, I think that would be really interesting. But
Mhm.
I mean, the only ones that would be taking like 100 hours would be like the diamond and ruby one. Like maybe like get 15 overclocks on your class would be a diamond one from scratch. It just to
Mhm.
kind of remind you like what the struggle is like and what it's like just to play with what you're getting, not everything. So And I mean, if it's I'm hyper fixated on this locking to a class thing, and that's why I think it's so important to have these as side saves, because you could have the gunner beat has threes with only the minigun challenge going on at the same time as scout beat or get 15 overclocks on the
Hmm.
class going on at the same time, and you can go back and forth between them, or just your normal save. And yeah, I mean, I guess that would get pretty convoluted for newer players. So, I mean, maybe having them unlock as you go wouldn't be a good thing. Maybe like half the challenges at gold and half the challenges at legendary would be a better fit. But I mean, I think there's a lot of untapped potential for having veteran players play the base, I say base game, base kit with no
Hmm.
upgrades, no overclocks, and actually go through and get those again. Because like, yeah, there's plenty of people that will do like elite deep dive, no upgrades, but
Hmm.
that's not the progression. It's just feeling the really weak class against content they were never meant to play again. It's not how many upgrades can I get before I'm promoted and can play the EDD. And maybe like, yeah, it's not like a challenge in the sense that like how equipped can I be before level 25 and then I have to play the EDD. No, it's just I have nothing and I'm playing the hardest content in the base game. So like it's kind of an idea that's been explored, but I think it's still it could be developed to be more than one little heat. Like you could actually get invested in a new character again.
I think they've always sort of danced around this with the progression in their design.
Yeah.
Oh, gold 3 is the cap.
Well, and
Red
that
3 is the cap. The
initially,
we're adding the promotion numbers, and progression of the guns and stuff like that. So,
I mean, initially the promoting actually did strip you of all your stuff when it was very
oh, that's
very
true.
first.
Yeah.
You retired instead of promoting. So, I mean, and I think that went away very quickly. I think it only lived in the game for about one or two updates, which back in that day it was only about 2 months. So clearly that didn't work, and they've been sort of on the recoil from that the whole time, and that's why I think. I mean, just based on
Yeah.
what they've proven to be the desire, not actually deleting your file or losing anything is probably the right way to go. But I mean, there's other ways to get that like raw dog fucking 4 second cooldown 20 meter grappling hook scout experience with flares that burn out in 15 seconds. There's a way to get that that doesn't require you to lose things that you grinded for hundreds if not thousands of hours.
Anyways, that's something. I
Well, my small things were kind of put to shame by that, but I'd like to
no, I
see
want to hear the small
multi class
things.
tutorials, like a reason,
Oh,
or a tutorial that actually incentivizes you to play your class,
new
because
speedrunning category.
for three new speedrunning categories,
Oh, let's go. Engineer out of bounds.
yeah, any percent. I mean, just imagine if there was a tutorial that actually taught you how to grapple as scout, so people weren't grappling to the sides of ledges and then falling, or
Hmm.
some or thing that actually taught you how to build a staircase between two walls and like alternate up them, or something that actually taught you to abuse driller and not just follow the cave mindlessly. I mean, maybe
Yeah,
those are
well, I
all
mean, like, God, it would be nice to have had a better runway for players all this time. It's just so far in the past. I wanted that. I wanted what you're talking about for so long. Yeah,
I
better
mean,
onboarding.
I'd almost like to see. Um, I can't think of a good way to do it because the 10 mission intro assignment is kind of like delicate. If you get four new players playing the game, like that shit is very well tuned and
Mhm.
lets them have a very good like uninformed experience together. I almost wish there was something early in the game. I don't think four tutorials back to back before you can play with anyone unless you hit skip is a good idea. Not at all. But it would have to be almost an entirely new system. So I think it's very hard for me to justify, but maybe like just some like incentive to switch classes and not get stuck as a scout main for your first 20 hours of the game. Like if there
Hmm.
was a button that said switch to engineer question mark plus 5,000 credits, like
Oh my god.
or like or tutorial or something in the character select menu that says like you haven't played these two tutorials, play them for 100 of
Oh
each
yeah, that would
crafting
be good.
material,
Oh
like
yeah,
question
yeah.
mark, like something like
That'd be
that,
sick.
and then have a tutorial that's actually tuned for the class that's being played. Because honestly right now I don't even like the one that we have because it's a dark room and you put gunner in it. Why not scout? You have all these dirt walls. Why not driller? You have no terrain to traverse. Even gunner can just side hop up that ledge that it makes you zip line up. There's just no goddamn reason for that cave to be so benign. Like
Hmm.
gunner shouldn't be the first tutorial. It should be it'd probably be driller, honestly, because I don't think scout movement is the right thing to give people right away, because that's a horrible feeling to lose. And the flare gun is going to be like, as soon as they lose those two tools, it's going to be like, I don't want to play this. This feels bad. But like having a more well lit tutorial, I know the glow crystals are there, but even then, like I mean, I think Helldivers has very few good examples to offer any other game, but the tutorial in that game plays decently well, I think, in that it
Hmm.
is not what the game is like. It very much makes you feel like you're being taught something rather than stumbling around in the darkness, flinging flares, trying to figure out what gold looks like because the pop up on the side of your screen is like tiny text and you don't realize there's a PNG in your HUD.
Oh my god, it'd be so funny if you had the Helldivers like tutorial for DRG where you're in a part of the space rig, you load into a part of the space rig and it's all like a bunch of the regular metal ground and stuff like that, and mission controls talking to you, walking you through different rooms where you do different stuff, like the NG platform tutorial or whatever else, here's just some dirt they have in the space rig that you're gonna drill through with driller. You drill through it, and that you pass a room that's like a closed door. It just says shooting range in like big text, and you can't even go in. It's just there in the space rig tutorial where you're doing this other stuff. I like that idea of the Helldivers like decentralized tutorial, but for DRG could be pretty effective for showing different things quickly, for sure.
And I think one thing that I can visualize being really cool for that is kind of showing, not like almost like a race ghost, not on your level obviously, but having
Hmm.
like you're in like a glass walkway and you can see this other test chamber next to you and you see like our kind of engineer movement of just like pung 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 and you're like that's what you're gonna be doing, nerd. Get better. Like and just kind of opening people up to the idea that there is a better way to play than sitting on the ground going, all right, boom, platform, okay, all right, boom, second platform, and then stumbling your way up it for the next 30 seconds. Like, I don't know, I think that kind of that's an interesting idea to me to be able to let people see like holy shit, like this shit is kind of unhinged at a high level of play,
Mm.
and that's completely achievable. But I don't know.
Axis Chronos advocating for a vanilla sandbox room put into
Tutorial.
the game to put.
So he can cheat spawn plague hearts in. SMH my head.
Yeah. No, I definitely agree with the an advanced tutorial, and I like the idea of having a menu or something similar that says, "Do this for engineer and get some early game uh, material stuff." That's pretty good. Gets
Yeah.
people in.
Mm-hmm. So I feel like the onboarding is still very rough and unfun for people that don't have someone to guide them.
Hmm.
And much like a lot of other games in the I've played 2,000 hours of this genre, trying to onboard a friend requires a lot of patience and a lot of self-control to not completely ruin the experience for them. Because like
Yeah, I mean, it was brought to my attention, and maybe you've had new players indicate this to you too, that the space rig and the assignments and all the crap that's in there is extremely confusing to somebody who just did the tutorial, which said nothing about what they were about to experience in the space rig. You know, the mission map and all this other stuff. Like, it just has a lot of assumptions, and those assumptions are built on the fact that, like, that rig was, you know, a different rig before it, and a different rig before that in early access.
Four
you know,
things you could interact with, and everything else was bare gray metal.
that's exactly right. At one point, it was just the drop pod itself, and like the same terminal copied and pasted with big yellow text. There was nothing else to get confused about. You know, so
yeah. I don't know.
Yeah,
and I think I was locked in on that a lot sooner because like one of the very first videos I made was how to get around the space rig and what's actually valuable for you. So I think I kind of forgot about that, but yeah, I think that's very telling that was probably the mindset I was in at the time. Is like, how the hell are you gonna navigate this as someone who doesn't have Sherpa?
Yeah.
All right. Well, my fish to fry that I don't know how you feel about it is 5+.
Are we gonna have to put 5+ in its own video, or is it gonna fit in this one?
I come to make an announcement. Shadow the Hedgehog's a bitch-ass motherfucker. He pissed on my fucking wife. That's right. He took his hedgehog fucking quilly dick out and he pissed on my fucking wife and he said his dick was this big. And I said that's disgusting. So I'm making a call-out post on my twitter.com. Shadow the Hedgehog, you got a small dick. It's the size of this walnut except way smaller. And guess what? Here's what my dong looks like. That's right, baby. All points, no quills, no pillows. Look at that, it looks like 2 balls in a bong. He fucked my wife, so guess what? I'm gonna fuck the earth. That's right, this is what you get. My super laser piss.